Alright, this is lesson 7, so we're nearing the end of the chapter, so probably after this, I would estimate that we're going to have a test at some point next week. So these are hands-on models to write fractions as decimals. So we worked on comparing fractions, ordering fractions, finding least common multiple and greatest common factor, and now we're going to start writing fractions as decimals. So let's first just go over our decimal place value. So this is my 1 spot. I have a decimal. And then we typically go to this spot. So here are my 1s. So that would be something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are whole numbers. Once I get to the right of my decimal, I skip the 1ths place and I go to the 10ths. After tenths comes hundredths. So it's basically just the normal place value or the whole number place value, but with a THS at the end. So if we are trying to get fractions into decimals, we are going to look for denominators of 10 and denominators of 100. So if we get a fraction like 1/2, the goal is always to get that denominator to equal 10 or to equal 100. In this question, it's asking us to get to 10. So how do I get from 2 to 10? Well, I multiply it by 5. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So if I multiplied 2 times 5, I also have to multiply 1 times 5 to get 5/10. So we're going to shade in a model of 5/10 using a grid. So here's my grid. So if I have 10 segments here, that means I need to shade in 5 of them. So sorry, my artistic ability isn't the greatest. So that's 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I shaded in 5/10. The model shows 5/10 or 5/10. So 1/2 equals 5/10. You should see that this amount is the same or equivalent to this amount. We just have different denominators, but those are equivalent fractions. And now I do have a fraction with a base 10, so I could write 5/10 as a decimal. All right, we're going to use a model to shade in 3/4 as a decimal, or to get 3/4 to 100 or to base 10. 4 does not go into 10, but I know 4 can go into 100. So what I'm going to do then is think, what do I multiply 4 by to get to 100? Well, I know 4 quarters makes $1. So quarters is 25. So 3 times 25 is 75. So we're going to shade in a model of 75/100ths using this grid. You'll notice that the squares are actually the same size. We just split them up into different parts. So this represents 3 out of 4. And now I need to shade in 75 little squares. So if I shade in this much, that would be 10. So I need to shade in 7 of these to get to 70. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I need to shade in 5 little ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I shaded it in differently than this way, so I didn't go, cut out a segment here, but this is the same. So how many squares out of the 100 are shaded in? 75. The model shows 75/100ths or 75/100ths. So 3/4 equals 75/100ths. Okay, because again, this is the 10ths place, this is the 100ths place, so I have 75 in my 100ths place, so 75/100ths. In the first activity, how would it change if 1/2 was written as a fraction with a denominator of 100? Would the result be the same? Yes, it would. So if I try to get 1/2 to equal 100, I can do that pretty easily here, because I know 2 can go into 100, multiplying that by 50. So 1 times 50 is 50. And these are equivalent. I would end up shading in, if I would go back to the hundreds block, I would end up shading in half of the hundreds block, which would be half of the square. Excuse me. And then number 2, do 3/5 and 6/10 represent equivalent numbers? Explain. Well, Whenever I see a fraction, my goal is to get this to equal 10 or to equal 100. It'd be pretty easy to get this to equal 10 because all I have to do is multiply 5 times 2 to get to 10. And then whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top, so I'll also multiply that by 2. 3 times 2 is 6. I have 6/10. Now if I remember my place value, I know 6/10 is just one place to the right of the decimal, and I'm going to put a 6 there. So yes, they are equivalent. All right, 591. As always with these videos, once you get to the practice page, I like you to pause the video and do them, and then unpause the video to check your work. So go ahead and pause the video. All right, by now you should have finished 3 through 8, so you are just checking your work. Again, the goal is to get the denominator to 10 or 100. 4 does not go into 10, so I'm going to get that to be 100. 4 times 25 is 100, so 1 times 25 is 25. And yes, you do need to shade in 25 of these guys. So if I shade in 2 columns and then 5 more, that is 25. Okay, I could get this either to 10 or to 100 by dividing by 2 or multiplying by 5. I do not want to divide 3 in half because that would give me a fraction in a fraction. So instead I'll get my denominator to equal 100 by multiplying 20 times 5. 3 times 5 is 15, which equals 1500. So I forgot to write 2500ths here. So 1500ths, right? We have to write it as a decimal. It's kind of the whole point of this. So to shade in that 1500ths, I need to shade in 15 out of 100. Okay. Number 5, I can easily get my denominator to 10 by multiplying 5 times 2. So I'm going to do 2 times 2 to get 4/10. Here is my tenths place, so I'll put a 4 there. So 4/10. And I need to shade in 4 of these 10s. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 6, again, I can easily get to 10 by multiplying 5 times 2. So I'm going to do 3 times 2 to get 6/10. And I would write that 0.66/10. And I'm going to shade in 6 of these guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7/10 is already has a denominator of 10, so I'm just going to write that as the decimal, so 0.7. And I'll go ahead and shade in 7 out of 10 of these. Oops, that's 8. I went too far, so pretend I didn't do that last one. I don't know if my eraser roll will work. Anyway, I should have 3 not shaded in. Oh, there it did. So sometimes when I do this quickly, I can't really see. Okay. And then 8, I can't get 25 to equal 10, so I'm going to get to 100 by multiplying by 4. So 8 times 4 is 32. I have 32/100ths. I need to write that as a decimal, so 32 goes into the 100th spot. I stop at the 100th spot. And I'm going to shade in 3 columns, or you could do 3 rows too, it doesn't matter, to represent 30/100ths or 3/10. Is that 2, 3, and then I need to shade in 200ths, which are the little squares. Okay. Number 9, Juanita practiced shooting 25 free throws at basketball practice. She made 17 out of 25 of the attempts. Write the fraction of attempts made as a decimal. So I have 17/25. Again, my goal is to get that to equal 10 or 100. I can't get that to equal 10, so I'll make it equal 100. I know that I have 4 quarters in a dollar, so I'm multiplying this by 4 to get to 100. Whatever I do to the top or bottom, I need to do to the other side, so 17 times 4. Let's say I don't know what 17 times 4 is. I'm going to do that off on the side, and I get 68. So I have 68/100ths, and I would write that as a decimal as 68/100ths. It says use models to help you solve, but if this works better for you, you can do it that way too. Otherwise, you would make a hundreds block. So Travis spent 20 minutes getting ready for school in the morning. He spent 9 out of the 20 minutes of time eating breakfast. write this fraction as a decimal. So again, I could get this to 10 by dividing it in half, but then I would have to divide 9 in half, and essentially I would get a fraction within a fraction. So instead, I'll go to 100 by multiplying this times 5. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So 9 times 5 is 45. I have 45 hundredths, or 0.45. All right. 11. What must be true about P and Q if the equation shows equivalent fractions? So basically they need to be the same, right? So P and Q must be the same factor. I'm writing factor. I don't know why it's not. There we go. And what factor is it? Oh, it's cutting me off there, but that says factor. Well, I multiply by 20, and P needs to be 20 to get me to 40. And then this is going to be the identity property. 2.5 times 1 equals 40 100ths. And we need the decimal equivalent for 2/5 and 40 100ths. So the decimal of this I can do right away because that already has a base of 100. So if I have 40 hundredths, I'm going to write that. You can annex the 0, it's the same thing. But now we need to do 2/5. So 2/5, I need to get this to equal 10 by multiplying 5 times 2. I need to do the same factor, so times 2, and I get 4/10 for 2/5. Yes, those are the same. You are going to do my homework then.